Dachahao, hello everyone. That was Chinese for hello everyone. I'm here in Taipei, Taiwan. I've been stuck here, well, quote unquote stuck. I can always go back, but I've been in Taiwan since the month of February because I'm sure for everyone the world is upside down, especially for musicians. Unfortunately, there's nothing for me in Montreal, so I decided to stay here where it's actually really, really safe for the moment. I hope it stays this way. And today I want to talk about something really, really cool. But before I start, if you enjoy this free content, you can consider liking, subscribing, clicking on that bell notification thing, sharing, commenting, because actually this affects the YouTube algorithm in some strange and mysterious ways. Yeah, I make a little bit of money from the views of these videos. You can follow me on my Facebook, on my Instagram for news, for lessons, and all sorts of little cool things. It makes a huge difference. And for some reason, if you feel like compensating me financially in some way, well, I run a website called DC Music School, where I've produced lessons for many musicians, such as Birelli Lagren, Mike Stern, Pat Martino, John Stoll, Ulf Akenius, many, many guitar players. If you're a gypsy jazz fan, I have on SoundSlice a series of beginner gypsy jazz lessons. You'll see all the links in the description box. So let's get started. So you might have read the title on YouTube and felt it was clickbaity. Maybe you were triggered. See, I know 2020 vocabulary. And it kind of is clickbaity, but it's actually the topic I want to talk about. For the sake of the video, just because I'm a jazz guitar player, or at least I pretend to be, I specifically focus on jazz guitar. You may have encountered the following scenario. You're looking online on sites you shouldn't be looking at when your parents aren't home. And then you come across an ad. And on the ad it says, someone has discovered a method for learning jazz guitar. And you click on the ad, the person starts talking about how they wish they had this method when they were starting out, and how they find it completely insane that no one has ever invented such a simple method before. I'm sure you've all seen ads like this. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Not only have you seen this particular video, but you've seen so many like this, and it's always the same argument. They say, I can't believe no one ever made such a method before. I wish I had this when I started. Always the same argument. So what's the deal with these so-called unique methods? I've been giving it quite a lot of thought for a number of years. Talked to a lot of friends about this phenomenon. And I want to share my thoughts with you. To give you the quick answer, I believe that these teachers did indeed come up with the ultimate guitar method, jazz guitar method. But for people like them. These methods worked for them because they were smart enough to create something, a practice routine that targeted all their personal flaws. Personally, I have been teaching for many, many years and in various situations. I've done workshops all over the world. In the beginning of my career, probably like most beginning teachers, I taught anyone who wanted to learn, basically. Kids, teenagers, adults, hobbyists, anyone who wanted a lesson, I was like, come. And as my music career got better and better, I was able to focus my teaching on targeted students, mainly professional or advanced musicians. And since 2015, I've had a homestay program where people from all over the world came to live and study with me. And it was a program that I really loved, but because of the pandemic, the pandemic put an end to all this. So I'm mentioning my teaching background just to say that I've had a unique opportunity to teach a wide variety of students from different backgrounds and even different cultures. Now, I don't like to generalize because there are always exceptions, but I've noticed there's a difference between teaching someone, say, from Taiwan or Japan to like teaching someone from France or Canada due to various factors: their cultural upbringing, their musical environment, their education, etc. For instance, if I'm teaching gypsy jazz in Paris, they have the tremendous advantage of being in the capital of gypsy jazz, as opposed to me teaching gypsy jazz in Beijing, China. Hello, President Xi. Don't arrest me. On the other hand, let's say I was an expert in traditional Chinese music. It would be the other way around. It will be easier for me to teach someone in Beijing than it would be to teach someone in Paris. For me, teaching is not just about sharing knowledge, but about the psychology behind sharing knowledge. Like understanding the psychological profile of my students to help them solve their unique set of problems. Therefore, all this to say that due to the difference in learning styles, there can be no one universal method that works for everyone, unfortunately. We all want this, but I don't think it exists. On top of the different learning styles, students also have different goals and aspirations. So it's just like layers and layers of complexity when it comes to teaching and learning. Of course, there are certain concepts that are universal, but how to transmit this knowledge will vary from person to person. At best, you can sort of categorize between different learning styles. For instance, I've encountered people who understood very quickly, meaning I just saw them once or twice and they would understand everything that I explained. But they might have tremendous difficulty assimilating the knowledge so that it became second nature. For instance, if you have a D7 in jazz, at least in bebop and even early jazz, it's quite common to play C minor over D7. Right? So just a line like that, C minor over D7. So they would understand the C minor over D7 right away, but they would have actual difficulty applying it, physically applying it. With them, I would have to figure out a way so that playing what we call 4 minor over 5/7 becomes second nature. We might create a series of etudes for them to just shed this concept over and over until it feels natural. Their problems in not being able to use 4 minor over 5/7 can come from a number of sources. Not knowing their their minor arpeggio well enough, not knowing any good lines to play, or the problem can be finding how to locate 4 minor when you have a dominant chord. So all this to say there can be a number of problems, and we have to figure out what that problem is specifically that they're having in order to assimilate this concept. Who knows? Maybe they even have trouble finding the 5/7 in the first place. In which case, I probably wouldn't be showing them 4 minor over 5/7. We'd be actually looking at the root of the problem. All this to say that we would be creating custom-made exercises to target this problem. Now with some other students, some of them can actually be very advanced in terms of skills. They're able to improvise fairly well. They may have good technique and all that. But when it comes to learning, they're much, much slower at learning. And I may have to spend quite a lot of time just explaining that one concept to them. So the difference between the students in both examples is that in the first, the student actually understands the concept of 4 minor over 5/7. Like I tell them E7, they'll say D minor, G7, F minor, but then can't actually apply this. Like something's blocking them. And just to simplify this example, let's just say the actual problem is that they don't know their chord positions well enough on the guitar, their minor chord shapes. So then we'd be making etudes like just to help master the chord shapes. With the other student, the problem maybe is that they do know their dominant chords and they know their minor chords, but when it comes to actually using 4 minor over 5/7, they have trouble. So in this case, we're going to maybe take just one position of a dominant chord, let's say D7. So we're in the key of G. We're going to take D7 and we're just going to shed C minor over D7. And I'm gonna maybe even create licks for them to practice so they can do visualization exercise and things like that. And then they can create their own lines based on chord tones, all sorts of things. Maybe I even explain that the biggest difference between D7 and C minor is actually mainly just the note G. Without the note G, it's practically the same chord. And if you don't believe me, you can try it out. Basically, C minor without the note G over D7 is a D7 flat 9. Now, these are just two small examples among so many different scenarios. Furthermore, we may even have to try to come up with a bunch of different practice routines to find the one that finally clicks for the student. And here's another example. Some students have a really, really good sense of time, but their ears are not so good. Vice versa, some people have amazing ears when it comes to like just hearing something, just being able to figure it, but their sense of time is not so good. So it's two completely different sets of problems. So in the best case scenario, we can broadly categorize students this way. Oh, good ears, good technique, bad sense of time, etc. But really, everyone is ultimately unique. And so are you. You're special. So just keep in mind, when I generalize, I do it with a lot of reluctance. But to give you an example, here in Taiwan, when I teach, it's often been workshops. But I've noticed something in Taiwan, is that everyone learns so fast. It's impressive. It's really impressive. I do like I said, I mainly do workshops because I don't really take private lessons. So with a workshop, it's often a one-off situation where we maybe spend a week or a month together and then I don't see them anymore, or I see them many years later. So I found that people in Taiwan learn extremely, extremely fast, but after the workshop, they don't practice. They probably just stop, give up, or move on to something else. And therefore, they never actually assimilated anything that I showed them. Of course, there are exceptions. So they came to the workshop to acquire the knowledge, but that's not enough. You have to follow through. You have to spend years, well, maybe months, if not years, to work on it so that this knowledge becomes part of you. And why don't they work on this knowledge? This knowledge, let's say, to play jazz. Well, there can be many reasons. Maybe they're not passionate about it enough. On the other hand, I've taught people elsewhere who were obsessed with jazz but learned much, much, much slower. Really significantly slower than the people in Taiwan. And but I worked really hard with them, and they continued on their own. And 5 years later, they have improved significantly. They are, just because they are obsessed with the music, they are already far more advanced than the people who learn really quickly. That is because they had the drive and the tremendous passion to learn jazz. Motivation, passion, these are all part of the learning experience. It's one thing to acquire knowledge, but then the desire to work towards a goal is another thing. And really, that's where environment can play a very big role in this. When you are surrounded by not only like-minded people, but people playing at a certain standard, at a high level, the motivation and the passion are easier to catch than being in a community where the level isn't as high and where there are fewer like-minded people. The point I'm making with all this is to say that learning is a complex phenomenon. It is everything has to be customized ultimately, and everything is influenced by so many factors. Sometimes factors not even related to the music, like economic factors, geographical factors, and things like that. So the best method that you'll probably find is the one that you create for yourself by getting to know yourself as much as possible. Knowing yourself means being really honest with yourself and being aware of what your problems might be. You have to have a clear idea of your musical aspirations. And it seems like an obvious thing to say, but not everyone knows themselves. Certainly not me. I had to be told, and I remember like an early experience for me, I think it was in 2005. There was this gypsy jazz guitar player that I admired. He's not famous at all, but he was my idol in those days. I still respect him a lot. And one time his accompanist couldn't do a tour with him, and he actually asked me to be the accompanist. That was a huge dream come true. But apparently I didn't do so well. I was dragging a lot in my accompaniment. And they would tell me that I'm dragging, but I actually didn't feel like I was dragging. I had no idea that I was dragging. They had to tell me. So these are things that I became aware of later because maybe someone I respected told me, or that I came to realize on mine through a lot of thinking, deep thinking. Another example that I encounter a lot is when people try to play swing music, gypsy jazz, or just even trad jazz. In the older school of jazz, we have this four to the bar rhythm, and I see a lot of people, like even professional musicians, when they get hired, like you can go to McDonald's or whatever, you sometimes hear like quote unquote trad jazz or gypsy jazz music with they hire like a guitar player to imitate the style, and it sounds like this. It sounds like, well, it doesn't sound like the style at all, and they're completely oblivious to this, and these like professional musicians. But when you listen to the actual music, nowhere does it ever sound like this. No, it's just super simple. So that's something like they're not aware of it. They probably have to be told, or they have to really listen carefully to see that that's actually not how it's done. It's actually something else. Overcome this quote unquote ignorance. Hopefully you have people that you respect that can give you guidance, or maybe you can try to record yourself and listen carefully and compare to a source that you respect. So let's say again, my idea of playing swing music is, then I go and listen to like Eddie Lang, Freddie Green, Django Reinhardt to see, wait, is it even similar in the same ballpark? No, it isn't. You have to be very, very observant. You have to listen to good players and listen clearly to what they do and use them as an example of what to strive for. Of course, a good mentor or a teacher can help point out such things as well. And once you have developed this kind of awareness, learning actually becomes a whole lot easier, because then you can start to experiment with different practice routines and create different etudes or whatever to target these weaknesses. And I think ultimately that's how everyone grows. The big lesson in all of this is that you have to learn to be independent. You can take lessons with a teacher, so go to music school, but ultimately you need to be self-taught. In my opinion, every good musician is actually self-taught, even if they had a teacher, even if they went to Berkeley or whatever. They had the self-motivation to seek out information on their own, to test out different ideas, to target their weaknesses. And as far as jazz is concerned, I would even suggest that you don't settle for one teacher, because I don't believe in this like classical master-teacher relationship. I think in jazz it's more about a community, and in jazz music jazz music can be played in so many different ways, and you have to figure out which way it is that you want to go for. And one good thing is to talk to as many good players as you can to hear what they have to say. And one person that you respect might say the complete opposite of another person you respect, and then you have to do some deep thinking about, all right, in which direction do I want to go to? And then you might realize that your long-term teacher might not have been the right one for you, you know? And it's actually quite easy to know if a teacher isn't the right fit. If you're progressing very slowly, or you're not even progressing, despite taking lessons for 5 years and practicing everything they showed you, you show up to an audition with a like serious high-level professional working band and you get your ass kicked, well, maybe you had the wrong teacher all along, or maybe you weren't motivated enough. I don't know. Not like criticizing anyone. So the main point I'm making is be inquisitive. Try, and seek as many opinions as possible so that you can figure out for yourself the best path to take. Based on my personal observations, if someone has the right habits from the start and works very hard, it's actually possible, at least in the jazz world, to be a full-fledged working professional musician within 5 years, even less than 5 years. And I'm even talking about people who just picked up the instrument like for the first time. I guess often we call these people prodigies. There are quite a lot of examples of people like that out there. You can call it talent, and it certainly plays a role. I know some people learn faster than others. It is what it is. But I want to be more specific. It's about the correct habits from the start, the passion, or the right environment. Remember that a university program usually lasts 4 years. And unfortunately, I've taught university grads who were just in no shape whatsoever to work in a real professional world. But I've worked with them, really target on the important skills, and now like they're quite competent enough. And it's often the simple things. But again, that's another video, or you can check out some of my previous YouTube videos where I talk about a lot of different skills, and I'll be making more about fundamental skills. For me, everything is always about fundamentals. But I'll just repeat one more time. Learn to seek out information on your own, talk to people, ask questions. Go ahead and take lessons from different people whose playing you like. Notice the difference in opinion between the different people, and reflect on what you've been told so that you can come up with your own opinions. Listen to a lot of music. Try to be involved with the community. Be honest with yourself. But most important, have fun and practice hard. And then you'll eventually create the ultimate method for learning jazz guitar. Thank you very much, and I'll see you guys in the next video.